Some stories are whispered, some stories are buried, some stories are locked away behind years of silence. This is one of those stories. Looking at this photograph, a little girl with purple bows in her ponytails, wearing a red striped shirt, one of the last snapshots of early childhood. You could see it in her eyes. Something's already there, a sadness, a knowing, as if somehow, even then, shadows were already gathering. She doesn't know it just yet, this little girl, but God already knew. Before the silence became deafening, before the shame took root, before the years of carrying stories too heavy to speak, He knew this moment would come, when silence would shatter, when truth would speak, when one voice breaking free will help others find theirs. Dear little Monica, this is the sound of silence breaking. Welcome to Shattering the Silence Podcast. I am Monica, and this is where we begin. I have a confession to make this morning. This is not the episode that was originally supposed to air. After posting my series of Facebook posts in which I was introducing Shattering the Silence podcast and also advising of the premiere date, something happened that I wasn't really expecting, and I will admit, nor was I prepared for. The number of people that reached out to me via text, email, or direct message through Facebook was overwhelming. The response was something, like I said, that I wasn't really expecting. Over the weekend, after I posted my video to Dear Little Monica, it really exploded even more so. The number of contacts, the number of letters, the number of emails that were sent let me know that there are a lot of people out there that is ready for this podcast. So I dedicate this podcast to them. And I also dedicate this podcast to those who have yet to reach out, but are watching in the background, wondering what this is going to be like. What I decided to do was take the number of questions I've received over the past couple of weeks, and I am going to dedicate this particular episode, at my premiere episode, answering those questions. Yes, I will share part of my story in that. You can't help but I want to also make sure I address the questions that were sent to me. So you are actually getting unedited video right now. Is going to be raw, is going to be authentic. All of them will be, but as you know, when you're dealing with the recorded podcast, you have some editing that you may take care of prior to your upload. This today is going to be just raw footage. I hope that is okay with you, but it'll let you know also who I am. And I want to become someone that you see as real, raw, and relevant. In other words, authentic. So I have a number of questions here. I did not prepare the answers. I did not study them. I did read over them to make sure that I put everything in order the way that people asked. Some of them asked the same questions. Some of them were new. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question that a lot of people was asking was, will you only discuss sexual abuse? I will not only discuss sexual abuse. While the root cause of many things that I've gone through that directed my choices stemmed from the sexual abuse I've suffered, we're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to talk about family dynamics. We're going to talk about some of the negative choices that was made as a result of the trauma that I've gone through and that many others have gone through. We're going to talk about fatherlessness. We're going to talk about church hurt, abuse. We're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to talk about rejection and abandonment and all of those other emotion that comes with time. So there's going to be a number of topics that we discuss. This isn't just a podcast for dealing with sexual abuse. That's my story. However, as you'll see, some during this season, but mainly next season, you'll see that some of the guests that I'm going to have on my show maybe did not experience the same type of abuse that I have, but yet they have something that they've gone through, an untold story that they are willing to share with us. So stick around so you can hear those stories as well, but it will not just be about sexual trauma. Here's a phrase they said, "This isn't your calling." You put it on one of your Facebook posts. Why are you doing this? So I want to address that. Yes, I did receive a message from somebody telling me that this isn't what God has called me to do. This isn't my calling. So why am I even doing it? So before I answer that, I want to read two letters that just came to me yesterday after posting that video that I posted on Saturday. These are letters that came to me. I'm going to read them to you. I did receive the permission to read them, though I will not share their name. The first one says, "Dear Monica, I've been watching your posts about shattering the silence, and with each one, my heart beats a little faster. When you talked about silence becoming a shield, about carrying stories too heavy to speak, I felt that in my soul. It's like you're telling parts of my story that I've never been able to voice. I haven't told anyone, ever. The shame, the fear, the what ifs keeps me locked in this prison of silence. But seeing you speak about your journey, watching you turn your pain into purpose, it gives me hope. Maybe someday I'll find courage too. Thank you for using your voice. Thank you for showing that it's possible to break free from silence. I may not be ready to share my story yet, but knowing I'm not alone in this, it means more than you know. Your courage is giving others permission to hope." And it says, "P.S. I'll be watching on January 6th. Every word of the description resonates with my soul." Here is another one I received. "Monica, I've been staring at my phone for 20 minutes trying to write this. Sorry, I got emotional with these. My hands are shaking. When I saw your post about silence, about shame, God, it's like you were reading pages from my life. I can't sleep tonight knowing your podcast starts tomorrow, because for the first time, someone's talking about what I've buried so deep I can barely breathe around it. The stuff that makes me feel crazy for still hurting after all these years. I don't even know how to talk about it. Never have. But something about the way you described that little girl in the photo, I just had to reach out. Even if I'm not brave enough to say more than me too. Thank you for doing this, for speaking when some of us still can't. I'll be watching tomorrow, probably crying, but I'm watching. So when someone tells me that this isn't my call, I know better. I am not doing this for me. I'm doing it just for the two emails that I just read. And I had a number of those like that. And I haven't even checked my Facebook DMs for other emails, some of them, because some people personally was reaching out to me, sending me prayers. But there are other people out there who reached out, and I don't know what they're going to say. I'm going to save those answers for questions and answers for next episode. But if I may say this is bigger than me. So this can only be a God thing. And if someone can be as presumptuous to say that this isn't the call of God on my life, so why am I doing it? That's coming from a place of pride within them. And the reason I say that is because how dare somebody say that they know absolutely everything that God has called you to? And while I know that this is something that God has called me to, this isn't it. There's so much more. This is just the beginning. So why am I doing this? Those two letters, those two people who have yet to find their voice, I am hoping that I can come alongside them, holding their hand and giving them a place to share their voice, to help them break that silence and eventually shatter the silence. Sorry for becoming emotional, but that's what this does to me. Another question came in. What if you lack support? What if you're ready to tear the silence, they say, but yet you lack their support to do so? If I can have a transparent moment right now, if I went by the support that I have, I probably wouldn't be doing this. And what I'm saying is, I don't have a large support network. I really don't. I have some people who are in my network that are rooting for me, that's cheering me on. I have a prayer circle that's going on. I have intercessors. I have people that's reaching out. Monica, are you okay? Monica, how are you feeling? I have those people, but I don't have a huge network of support. And what I'm saying is your ability to use your voice to help others has to be bigger than the support network that you have, because it's not about them. It's about you receiving your healing so that you can help someone heal. So you can grab somebody by the hand and walk the journey with them. So what if you lack support? If you really feel that this is something for you to do and it's something for you to begin to speak about, reach out to me again. Reach out to me again. And for those of you who may be watching, the way to reach out to me would be ShatteringTheSilencePodcast at Outlook.com. Again, ShatteringTheSilencePodcast at Outlook.com. So, when did silence first become your shield? When did you recognize that you had to be quiet about what you experienced? From what I gather from the video that you showed this weekend, this happened to you when you were just a little child. And as a little child, it seems that you immediately had to go into a protective mode. How could someone so small have to protect themselves? So when did silence first become my shield? The way they put that, my shield. Silence first became my shield when the abuse happened. I didn't understand it. It was someone that I knew, someone that my family knew. And when I went to tell the adult in my life at that time, they told me it didn't happen. Being as young as I was and not quite understanding, I then said, no, but it did happen. This is what happened. I don't understand what's going on. And I don't want to get too graphic because this is about what's going on the inside of people that's going through this more than it is about the details of the event. So when I said I did this did happen, sorry, I was then told, no, it didn't. I'm telling you, it didn't happen. And it was in that moment at that young age, a lot of what happened to me since that time, and even into my adult years, I never shared. I didn't feel that I could. And we're going to get into that a little more as we progress through this season. But that's when silence first became my shield, when the adult in my life at that time told me that what didn't happen to me didn't happen. And even more so, I had to continue to be around that person. So, what lies did it tell you about yourself? So, what lies it told me about myself back then? These are some good questions. is that what happened to me didn't matter and I didn't matter. I was young enough to have an innocence about me, but old enough to know that what was happening wasn't right. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong because when it was being done, I was told not to say anything. And in that moment, when I was told not to say anything, silence didn't become my shield because I went home and told someone. And it was when they told me it didn't happen that became my shield. So when I was told it didn't happen, that made me think that again, I didn't matter. And I don't know if I knew that phrase back then, I didn't matter. I just knew that I was not to come to this person and tell them what's going on with me because anything that I was saying was a lie. It was a story, as we used to say. We couldn't use the word lie. We had to say that's a story. So it was a story. How did silence promise to protect you? I don't know if at that age when it began, if I knew it as protection. Again, I just knew that I couldn't tell about what was happening because it was a story. It was almost like it was made up. Um, so I don't know if silence promised me anything at that young age. I knew that it wasn't going to be told to me that I'm telling a story, that I'm making things up. As a little child, I used to get in trouble for lying. So I didn't want to get in trouble for lying, if that makes sense. So if what I'm saying is not the truth and it's going to be looked at as a lie, then it's going to be worse because I'm going to get in trouble for lying. So I didn't say anything. What did silence cost you? It continued to cost me my innocence. It continued to cost me my voice. I became a very shy person. Even to this day, I am a bit of an introvert. And I would say that I am a bit of an introvert because of the things that happened to me throughout life. That caused me to become more into myself than being outgoing and being around people. Um, it brought about a shame as I began to get older, become older. The shame came because I was like, I can't dare tell someone like this because back then people didn't talk about it as much. It's different. Um, but I would say it cost me innocence. It cost me my voice. It cost me being able to communicate effectively as I was growing up. Couldn't tell anybody why. I was just always afraid of being looked at as a liar. So, hmm, where was God when words failed? So at that time, I did attend church. As a child, we did attend church. Um, but I don't know if I can truly say I had a relationship with God. Sure, we went to Sunday school and all of that, but I went because I was told to go, not because I truly knew who God was. So I can't even answer this question, where was God when words failed? Not as a child. Now, I became born again in June of 1996. And a lot of things I was going through, again, that's going to be as in part of later episodes. But I can't say that I honestly questioned God. Even as even with having a new relationship and who God was and who he is, I can't say I ever said, well, God, why did you do this to me? Why did you allow these things to happen to me? I don't think I ever voiced it. I don't think I ever voiced it. I did begin reading books, however. I began to purchase books in private. I wouldn't show people the books that I was buying because then they would know something happened, something was wrong. But it was in those books that I've read, and I'm going to reference them in later episodes. But in some of the books that I read, I was reading stories about how people question God. And in my mind, I knew I never questioned him out loud, but I was able to relate to some of the questions that I was reading in the book. So when the question here says, where was God when words failed? He was always right there. I'm here. We're in 2025. Look how long ago this happened. He's using it as a testimony. I no longer could say I am a sexual abuse survivor. Revelations 12:11 tells me I overcome by the words of my testimony. So I am an overcomer and I am able to share my story in such a way that it's going to help others. I'm not saying that it's going to be an easy journey, but I'm able to share. I am healed, but it doesn't mean that I won't become emotional. I think I'm giving you the best vulnerability of myself, being transparent, being open. But I also know that, again, I have a prayer circle going on while this is taking place. So that's where God was. He was right there. What finally broke your silence? So, what finally broke my silence, and I have some notes here that I was going to refer to, because again, this wasn't the planned episode. So, what finally broke my silence? If I can be honest, breaking my silence wasn't planned. It was something that just happened. Now, I tested the waters quite a bit when, well, not quite a bit. I tested the water a few times where I would tell people or I would ask people, hey, did this ever happen to you? And sometimes people would just blow it off like, yeah, that's nothing. But for me, it was always something. It was always something. And it bothered me that they felt that something so serious was nothing. There were other times when I tried to share with people and they didn't connect. They didn't catch it as me crying out because remember, I was too afraid to speak out directly. There were other times when I would listen to other people share their story with me and I would begin to shed a tear. And I don't know if the people picked up on the fact that maybe I was shedding a tear because this is my story too, or what. I'm not sure. But what finally broke my silence was I was in a counselor's office and we were talking about something, and I finally said, no, I'm not okay. This is what happened. Going to share more about that next week in that next week's episode. Who or what gave you permission to speak? I was at a point in my life where I was so broken. And what I mean by broken, I mean going through all of the rejection, going through feelings of abandonment, becoming needy, not being able to speak in such a way where people understood me. I had a lot of emotional baggage that was going on, and I knew something had to break. I knew something had to happen. I didn't continue with that particular counselor, but that was the first time I spoke. And I remember that counselor, he said to me, don't you think you need help with this? And at that time, I said no. Um, but I felt the level of relief of just being able to say something happened and here is what it is. If I could pause for a minute and speak about counseling relationships, I said no to him because, believe it or not, I didn't feel the connection that he would be the one to help me. Now, since that time, I found another counselor that I've been with, or therapist I've been with for about 8 years now, and we connect on a different level. You want to be careful with the therapist that you choose. Do your research, make sure that that is the person who can really help you through some of the challenges you may be facing. You do not have to share everything during the first session, and you don't have to share everything with that particular counselor. I think you will know. For me, it took a lot of prayer. Um, and I will say that I was fortunate enough to meet the counselor that I have now, the therapist that I have now. Hopefully, he will agree to come on one of these podcast episodes and just to speak about the counseling relationship, not my counseling relationship with him, but how to choose a therapist and why one is so important when you're dealing with overcoming trauma or the manifestations of that root of trauma. So I wanted to put that plug in. Um, what truth finally spoke louder than shame? The truth that I was tired of hurting, that I was tired of not being able to show people who I really was. The truth of carrying such a burden. It was such a burden to carry. Now, I know some of you watching may not have um, a spiritual life. You may not believe in a savior, a Messiah. But I will say that my faith has really kept me. It was the most important thing for me. And as I continue my faith walk, I would get a little stronger each year. And I will say that it was through strengthening my faith walk, strengthening my relationship um, with God, believing on Jesus Christ. That's important. That helped me get to where I am today. So the truth that finally spoke louder than shame is the truth that I could be set free. It was the truth that I was an overcomer. The truth that my identity was not in what happened to me or any of those negative choices that I chose after that. My truth and my identity was not in the father that abandoned me, but my truth was in the fact that I am a child of God and I believe everything that the Bible says about me and who I am. That truth finally spoke louder than the shame. When did I first feel less alone? So I first felt less alone when I forget which year it was, but we had a string of um, stories in the media come out about um, sexual abuse um, in the workplace, sexual harassment. We had a lot of that come out, and that's when everybody started using the hashtag Me Too. And I could say during that time, during the hashtag of Me Too, I sat down one day and I said, hey, me too. And I allowed those words to ring. I said it out loud. It was the first time I said me too in a way that I was sharing it with people who finally understood. They finally, regardless of whatever age it happened to them, they understood that something sexual in nature happened and it wasn't right. It wasn't right. It was a violation and it wasn't something that had to be accepted. Didn't wasn't something that I had to be shamed about. So I can remember when that hashtag started floating around and I'm sure some of you are very familiar with a lot of the stories that came out. But when I first began to say me too, first in my mind and then out loud. I put it on a Facebook page for the first time. I put it out in public. And I can remember no one responded to my post. And one of my friends, one of my male friends said, and I'm paraphrasing because it was a long time ago. And he said, "Oh, I wish other people would have seen this post," or something like that, he said, because um maybe they would have responded or something like that. I'm paraphrasing because it was a while ago. But I remember saying back to him, I remember replying saying, "This isn't for them. It was for me. It was for me not only to have Me Too in my mind, not only be able to vocalize Me Too, but to put it out there for the world to see, Me Too." It didn't matter to me that no one responded. It didn't matter at all. That was the first step of me saying, okay, I can truly be healed of all of this. So yeah, it was when Me Too first became famous. Now, I will say I want to make sure I put a plug in there, and I'm going to speak about this in another episode. With the recent, or back then it was recent, with issues with all of the celebrities and people who were being um, sued for sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and that hashtag Me Too was coming out. That was not the first time that it was used. It actually gained some feet, if you will, during that season, but someone else actually created that hashtag Me Too. And again, I'm going to speak about that um, in a bit more in depth in a later episode. Ooh, these questions are heavy. Like I said, I wrote them down without actually meditating on them. So you're really getting these answers in the moment. I'm actually having to bring myself back in the moment that this happened or how I was feeling. Um, it's not always, like I said, it's not always easy, but it's necessary. So it says, finding your voice. How has your voice changed since then? What surprised you the most about speaking up? So, how has my voice changed since then? Is I've become confident in who I am as a child of God. I've become confident in who I am and that I am no longer one that has to be defined by events that happened in my life. All those events did in fact happen. It doesn't define who I am. It does not give me that identity like I was allowing it to do. So before I began walking in my healing, I was looking at myself as less than. It reminds me of the story that we read about the children of Israel when they went to survey the land, the promised land. God had already told them it was a land of milk and honey. He already told them that it was a land of abundance. He already told them that this is something they were going to walk in. But they still wanted to spy out the land. And when they went to spy out the land, 12 of them were sent. There was only two that came back with a good report, which was Joshua and Caleb. But the other 10 began to compare themselves with the people and with the things that they saw in the land. And what they said was, we are like grasshoppers to them, meaning they compared themselves to something that they felt was bigger than them. And they began to call themselves grasshoppers. Well, in essence, that's what I did. I began to compare myself to the events that happened in my life, those abuses that happened to me. And I guess I saw myself as the grasshopper. And I began to identify not with the promises that was made to me about who I truly am. I began to identify with these events and circumstances that happened in my life. So I walked around with not feeling very confident about myself, mainly known as low self-esteem. But it boiled down to I wasn't feeling confident. So what changed since then? The confidence that I have to talk about that, knowing who I am in Christ, knowing what my identity is and who I am. Um, the fact that I'm bringing others along with me on this journey, helping them walk through their healing. What surprised you the most about speaking up? The number of people who told me not to speak up. That surprised me the most. The number of people who heard the name of the podcast, Shattering the Silence, and they literally said to me, remain silent. Even those that actually said or thought, this isn't your calling, why are you even doing this? They are in essence telling me to remain silent. And that really surprised me that there could be somebody who say, remain silent. Keep it under the rug. You don't want people to know this about you. People are going to begin talking about you. Well, people are going to talk about you anyway. So that was one of the things that surprised me the most about speaking up, was the number of people who wants me to remain silent, the number of people who's not supporting me in this journey. Before I knew that I was going to I knew I was going to do the podcast. Let me change that. But before this date came, I was in a season of silence. And I am amazed at the number of what it showed me in the season of silence. And I'm going to, again, share that a little bit more. But to answer this question, the season of silence that I was in this year allowed me to see exactly what silence does. There is confidentiality. That's a different silence. That is a healthy silence. And then there's a silence where it literally shows what it does to relationships. It shows what it does to people within themselves. It's what you make of it. And what I say that shocked me, because when I was placed in a season of silence, a lot of people changed towards me. They began to accuse me of things that wasn't even so. They began to um, come up with these stories in their head that I don't even know how they came up with these stories, or they would say things like, I don't even know what's going on with you. But there was nothing going on with me. I was just being obedient to being silent. I was told to be silent and be watchful. So I journaled during that season, and it literally showed what silence does to people. But more importantly, that's what surprised me the most about speaking up, was the number of people who wanted me to remain silent, and the number of people who, because I was in a season of silence, changed towards me, took things away from me because I was silent instead of just reaching out. I didn't say I couldn't talk. It's just that there were certain things that I was not to speak on in that season. It was a phase rather, a preparation phase. Where did you find unexpected strength? So while I have people in my life that I truly know, in different states, in the same state, in the same city, my unexpected strength came from the people that I met through Facebook. Believe it or not, that I met online, that I have never met. And my strength, that the words that they've poured into me, the prayers that they've prayed, the texts that they've sent, the Zoom calls that we've set up, that they become a level of accountability in my life. The people I met that's encouraging me to go further, who is giving me platforms to speak about this, people who's taken my hand and say, this story has to get out there. Um, that was very unexpected. You don't expect strangers to be some of the ones who's very encouraging, very motivating, that's helping you out. People that have poured into me just by offering their resources or offering their services to me because they know the season that I'm in. It's been amazing. So in that, I find strength. The number of people that have reached out who sent me messages that they know that this is a God thing for me. They know that this is the season for my life. They know that this is something I'm supposed to do because they've prayed. Um, and this is what they've heard, the number of encouraging messages and scriptures that they've sent to me. Most of that, not all of it, because I have some people that reach out to me every day and encourage me every week, every month. So, but what is unexpected was the people that I only know through Facebook. I have yet to meet in person. They've been very encouraging. How did breaking silence affect your prayer life? Oh, yes, it increased it a great deal. Knowing that I was going to do this podcast also increased it a great deal. Um, yeah, that's all I'm going to say to that. Warfare is real. There has been a level of warfare in 2024 that I've experienced that I've not experienced before. The level of warfare has been very intense. Um, it's just I can't even really talk about how much it is. But again, that's when, people come alongside you, those prayer warriors, the intercessors who prays for you. You actually feel the prayers, but my prayers have definitely increased in this season, especially since I'm speaking up more, invited to other podcasts, again, invited to some other stages to speak and share my story. What helped you to keep speaking? Those two letters that I read to you. I was getting those a lot. A lot of times when people say, "What do you do?" and I tell them, "Oh, I'm a life coach. Oh, I'm starting a podcast." Um, and they say, "Okay, but what's your niche?" And I share that with them. Um, oh, I know somebody who could use you, or I know somebody you should speak to, and them referring me to people, or those people being referred to me, and they're reaching out. That helps me keep speaking, and I know it's a need. Those two letters, it's absolutely a need. How did God show me his presence? He's showing me throughout. Whether somebody comes to me and they're a believer or they're not a believer, I don't limit who comes to me, but God shows me that he's here regardless. Regardless. He's in all of this. This, again, I started out by saying this is totally bigger than me. What supported my journey? I don't know if that is what or should it say who? So, but I just answered the who. So what supported my journey? I'm going to say knowing that this is part of the call of God on my life. Um, Other people knowing that it's a part of the call of God on my life really helped support um, having a platform to do it. Just getting here, recording it, and being able to upload it. That's a big thing. Where does strength come from? Strength comes from the Lord. Strength comes from God. I know that is a cliche that a lot of people say, but for me, it's real. My strength absolutely comes from the Lord because it is only Him. And when I say the Lord, let me be clear. It is only through Jesus Christ, Yeshua, my Messiah, that I get my strength. It is only God, the Father, that can touch the heart of people to encourage me as they have, to sow into my life as they have, to provide support, to provide comfort, to provide prayer, to even encourage you to watch. Um, yeah, my strength comes from the Lord for sure, and Him using those people to be a part of my life. What wisdom would I share? The wisdom that I would share today would be if you feel that this is your time to speak, as I do have people reaching out saying, thank you for opening the door. It's a crack I'm ready to walk through. Um, Write it down, begin journaling. Don't lose your voice. Your voice doesn't have to be the spoken voice. You can write it down first. I am a journaler, and I put a lot of my thoughts in my journal first before I'm doing this. So the wisdom that I would share is, um, keep your voice, but also be mindful of who you're opening up to. And the reason I say that, because if you're not healed, the response from others or the lack of response from others can cause you to have some other emotional challenges that you don't want to go through. So I would say always be mindful of who you're sharing with, especially if you're not complete in your healing. How has God redeemed your silence? He redeemed my silence again by um, giving me the call of God on my life. I often quote Jeremiah 1:5. Before I was in my mother's womb, he knew me. He ordained me. He formed me. He knew me. He ordained me. He's using my voice to reach the masses. YouTube allows for you to reach the nations, and I am a willing vessel, willing to do that, willing to share my story. What purpose emerged from your pain? This Shattering the Silence, my life coaching business, coach cross, sorry, cross to cross coaching, is really stands for from the crossroads to the cross. Um, MD Cam, your crossroads coach. I am Coach Cam, and there are a lot of people in life that um, are at a crossroads in life for whatever reason, and they don't know how to navigate the crossroads. And so I help them navigate those crossroads in life. So if you're looking for a coach, and if you're just want to have a discussion, please reach out to me at coachmdcam@outlook.com. What gives me hope now? Knowing the number of people that I am going to help, knowing the number of people that may listen to this podcast, and I'm just giving them a little simmer of hope, or just even saying, well, just journal your thoughts, even if that's something that helps them, um, then I am serving my purpose. That gives me hope that there will be a number of people that will be healed through this, and that will speak out, and that will also come along other people and bring them bring them through their journey. What would you tell someone who's still silent? Find a support system. That silence, that shame that we go through really eats away at the inside of us. So it's very important that we make sure we get the support that we need. If you don't have anyone to reach out to, and you feel that you don't have anyone to reach out to, please reach out to me. Again, you can reach out through, if you're a Facebook friend of mine, reach out on Facebook, or you can use Shattering the Silence Podcast at outlook.com, or Coach MD Cam at outlook.com, and I am here for you. Absolutely. You know that saying that's going around now, we listen and we don't judge. Well, I will listen and I will not judge, because I can relate. Okay, this is the last questions. And I'm skipping some of the questions because there was quite a few. I kind of just lumped them in on different cards. Um, this one says, how can I help get your story out? The way you can help: subscribing to the channel, liking the videos, comment under the videos, and share. So subscribe, like, comment, and share. And if you don't want to comment under the video, then you know what? Subscribe, like, and share. Every person that shares this video is potentially reaching thousands of other people, hundreds of other people, who can get the healing that they need. Sometimes they just need to know that there is somebody else out there, just a regular old person, not a therapist, not, somebody who has all of these credentials behind them and they seem untouchable, but those everyday people that's just like them, and they're waiting for a voice, or they're ready to see somebody who understands, or ready to reach out to somebody. So again, by you subscribing, liking, sharing. It will do wonders. It will reach whomever it needs to reach. Again, remember, this isn't about me. This is about the people that we're going to reach. And with that, I thank you for allowing me to shatter the silence.